Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. The neon signs flickered over the city. Behind the polished mahogany bar, David methodically wiped down glasses, his movements practiced and efficient. The Friday night crowd was starting to trickle in, filling the air with chatter and laughter. "Hey bartender, another round over here!" A group of women called out, their voices light and carefree. David nodded, forcing a smile as he prepared their cocktails. As he worked, his gaze kept drifting to the women at the bar, the way they carried themselves, laughed freely, the casual grace in their movements. A familiar ache bloomed in his chest, a longing he couldn't quite name. One woman tossed her hair over her shoulder, the silky strands catching the light. David's hand tightened on the cocktail shaker. What would it feel like to have long hair like that? To feel it brush against his neck, to style it in intricate updos. He shook his head, trying to dispel the thoughts, but they persisted, as they always did, the soft fabrics of dresses and skirts, delicate jewelry, the art of makeup, all the things that seemed so natural and effortless for these women, yet felt impossibly out of reach for him. David delivered the drinks, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. As he turned back to the bar, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the mirror behind the liquor bottles. Short, dark hair, strong jawline, broad shoulders. Everything society said a man should be, so why did it feel so wrong? The night wore on, a blur of drink orders and small talk. But even as David went through the motions, a part of him felt disconnected, observing from a distance, watching the easy way women moved through the world, laughing and dancing without a care. What would it be like to feel that comfortable in your own skin? As the last customers filtered out and David began cleaning up, the thoughts he'd been pushing away all night came rushing back. The persistent feeling that something wasn't quite right, that the reflection in the mirror didn't match the person he felt himself to be inside. He'd tried to ignore it for so long, told himself it was just a phase, just confusion, just his imagination running wild. But the feeling only grew stronger with each passing day. David's hands shook slightly as he stacked the clean glasses. He couldn't keep living like this, suffocating under the weight of expectations and societal norms. Something had to change. Taking a deep breath, he made a decision. It was time to stop hiding, time to be honest with himself. Time to explore the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the person he was meant to be wasn't the person the world saw him as. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of research, soul-searching, and difficult conversations. David connected with support groups and medical professionals, slowly coming to terms with the realization that he was transgender, that the discomfort and disconnect he'd felt for so long had a name: gender dysphoria. It wasn't an easy journey. There were moments of doubt, fear, and uncertainty. But with each step forward, David felt a little lighter. A little more like his true self was emerging from behind the mask he'd worn for so long. Finally, after years of feeling trapped in a body that didn't feel like his own, David made the decision to transition. It was a long and complex process involving hormone therapy and eventually gender confirmation surgery. But as challenging as it was, it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. The day finally came when David, now Haley, stood in front of the mirror, seeing her true self reflected back for the first time. Tears welled up in her eyes as she took in the soft curves, the delicate features that had always been there, waiting to emerge. She ran a hand through her hair, now grown out and styled in loose waves. Her fingers traced the line of her jaw, softer now, more feminine. It was like seeing a photograph develop, the image slowly coming into focus until it was crisp and clear. Haley took a deep breath, smoothing down the fabric of the cocktail dress she'd chosen for her first shift at a new bar. The material felt foreign against her skin, but in the best possible way. She'd dreamed of this moment for so long, and now it was finally here. With trembling hands, she applied a coat of deep red lipstick, the color bold and confident. She was done hiding, done pretending to be someone she wasn't. Tonight was the start of a new chapter, a chance to finally be her authentic self. The walk to the new bar felt like floating on air. Haley's heels clicked against the pavement, each step filled with a newfound confidence. She caught her reflection in store windows as she passed, still marveling at the transformation. As she approached the bar, nerves started to creep in. What if the other staff weren't accepting? What if customers were cruel? But Haley pushed the doubts aside. She'd come too far to let fear hold her back now. The bar owner, a gruff but fair man named Frank, looked up as she entered. His eyebrows raised slightly, but he simply nodded and gestured for her to get behind the bar. "Glad you're here," he said gruffly. "We're short-staffed tonight." Haley blinked, surprised by the easy acceptance. "You don't mind that I'm different from when you hired me?" Frank shrugged. "You can mix drinks? You're polite to customers? That's all I care about. Besides," he added with a wry smile, "a pretty girl behind the bar might bring in more business." Warmth bloomed in Haley's chest at being called a girl so casually. She nodded, fighting back tears as she tied on her apron and got to work. The night started slow, giving Haley time to adjust to her new role. She found herself relaxing as she fell into the familiar rhythm of mixing drinks and chatting with customers. Her coworkers were mostly indifferent, focused on their own tasks. As the evening wore on, the bar began to fill up. Haley's confidence grew with each successful interaction, her smile becoming more genuine. She caught sight of herself in the mirror behind the bar, still feeling a thrill at seeing her true self reflected back. Well, look who it is. Haley's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the voice. She turned to see a group of regulars from her old bar, led by a man named Mike. They were staring at her, expressions a mix of shock and curiosity. For a moment, panic gripped her. What if they reacted badly? What if they made a scene? But Haley took a deep breath, reminding herself of how far she'd come. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her life anymore. "Hey guys," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "What can I get for you?" Mike's brow furrowed as he studied her face. "David, is that you?" Haley nodded, lifting her chin slightly. "It's Haley now, actually, but yeah, it's me." A beat of silence followed, tension thick in the air. Then Mike's face broke into a grin. "Well, I'll be damned. You look great. What'll you recommend for us tonight, Haley?" The knot in Haley's chest loosened as the other regulars chimed in with compliments and questions. She found herself laughing as she mixed their drinks, explaining bits of her journey as she worked. As the night went on, Haley felt herself truly relaxing for the first time in years. She bantered with customers, both old and new, her natural charm shining through now that she no longer felt like she was playing a role. One of the regulars, a man named Chris, lingered at the bar long after his friends had left. He'd always been quieter than the others, and Haley had often wondered if there was more going on beneath his reserved exterior. "You seem happier," Chris said softly, nursing his drink. "More yourself, I guess." Haley smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "I am. It hasn't been easy, but for the first time, I feel like I'm living authentically." Chris nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's really brave, being true to yourself like that." Their eyes met, and Haley felt a spark of connection. There was something in Chris's gaze, understanding, admiration, maybe even a hint of attraction. It sent a thrill through her, the possibility of being seen and appreciated as her true self. As the bar began to empty out, Chris lingered, helping Haley clean up despite her protests. They fell into easy conversation, laughing over shared memories and swapping stories about their lives since they'd last seen each other. Chris said as they finished up, his voice hesitant but warm. "There's this great little cafe that just opened up down the street. They do an amazing brunch on Sundays. If you're free this weekend, maybe we could check it out together." Haley's heart skipped a beat. Was he asking her out? The thought both thrilled and terrified her, but as she looked at Chris's gentle smile, she felt a surge of courage. "I'd like that," she said, returning his smile. "It's a date." As they exchanged numbers and said their goodnights, Haley felt a sense of possibilities opening up before her. She'd taken a huge leap of faith in transitioning, in being true to herself, and now it felt like the world was finally starting to align with who she really was. Walking home that night, Haley's steps were light, her heart full. The journey ahead wouldn't always be easy, she knew. There would still be challenges to face, prejudices to overcome, but for the first time in her life, she felt truly, completely herself, and that made all the difference in the world. The cafe was bustling when Haley arrived that Sunday, the aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries filling the air. She smoothed down her floral sundress, nerves fluttering in her stomach. This was her first real date as Haley, and she wanted everything to be perfect. Chris was already there, waving from a small table near the window. His face lit up as Haley approached, and she felt a warmth bloom in her chest at his genuine smile. "You look beautiful," he said as she sat down, his voice soft and sincere. Haley blushed, still not quite used to compliments like that. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." They fell into easy conversation as they perused the menu, sharing stories and laughing over the elaborate names of some of the dishes. Haley found herself relaxing, Chris's calm presence soothing her nerves. As they waited for their food, Chris's expression grew more serious. "Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if it's too personal." Haley nodded, bracing herself. She'd grown used to fielding all sorts of questions about her transition, some more tactful than others. "What made you decide to take the leap?" Chris asked, his voice gentle. "It must have been scary, making such a big change." Haley took a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "It was terrifying," she admitted. "But living as someone I wasn't, that was even scarier. I reached a point where I couldn't keep pretending anymore." Chris nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "That takes a lot of courage. I admire that about you, your bravery in being true to yourself." Warmth spread through Haley's chest at his words. It meant more than she could express, to be seen and appreciated for who she really was. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Haley found herself opening up more, sharing parts of her journey she'd never told anyone before. Chris listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and offering words of support. Chris said as they finished their meal, "I've always felt like there was something different about you, even before, when you were still David, like you were holding part of yourself back." Haley's breath caught in her throat. Had she been that transparent, even when she was trying so hard to hide? Chris continued, his voice soft. "Seeing you now, as Haley, it's like watching someone come alive. You're radiant." Tears pricked at Haley's eyes, overwhelmed by the sincerity in Chris's words. She reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, the real me." Chris squeezed her hand gently, his thumb tracing small circles on her skin. "I'm honored that you trust me enough to share this part of yourself with me." As they left the cafe, walking hand in hand through the sunny streets, Haley felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey ahead might not always be easy, but moments like this, being accepted and cherished for who she truly was, made it all worthwhile. Chris paused as they reached a small park, tugging Haley gently towards a bench. As they sat, he turned to face her, his expression serious but warm. "Haley," he said softly, "I want you to know that I see you. All of you. Your strength, your courage, your kindness, and I think you're incredible." Haley's heart raced, a mix of joy and nervous anticipation flooding through her. Chris leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. But Haley found herself leaning in too, drawn by the warmth in his eyes. Their lips met in a soft, sweet kiss. It was gentle and brief, but it sent sparks through Haley's entire body. As they pulled apart, she saw her own wonder reflected in Chris's eyes. "Wow," Chris breathed, a smile spreading across his face. Haley laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Wow, indeed." As they continued their walk, hands intertwined, Haley felt a sense of possibilities stretching out before her. For so long, she'd felt trapped, unable to fully experience life or love. But now, as Haley, she was finally free to be herself, to love and be loved in return. The journey ahead might not always be smooth, but Haley knew she had the strength to face whatever challenges came her way. She'd already conquered the biggest hurdle, being true to herself. Everything else? That was just part of the adventure. As the weeks passed, Haley settled into her new life with a sense of joy and wonder. Each day brought new experiences, new chances to be her authentic self. At the bar, she'd become a favorite among the regulars, her warm personality and skillful mixology drawing people in. Her relationship with Chris blossomed, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. He was endlessly patient, always willing to listen and learn. Together, they navigated the complexities of their evolving relationship, finding strength in each other. One quiet evening, as they sat cuddled on Chris's couch watching old movies, Haley found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. She turned to Chris, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Chris looked at her, concern etched on his face. "For what, sweetheart?" Haley gestured vaguely, struggling to put her feelings into words. "For everything, for seeing me, for loving me, for making me feel normal." Chris pulled her close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "You don't need to thank me for that, Haley. Loving you is the easiest, most natural thing in the world." As Haley burrowed into Chris's embrace, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead might not always be smooth, but she knew she had the strength to face whatever came her way. And with Chris by her side, she felt invincible. The credits of the movie rolled, but neither of them moved to turn it off. They sat in comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's presence. "You know," Chris said softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on Haley's arm, "I've been thinking about something." Haley hummed questioningly, too content to form words. "I was wondering if you'd like to move in together." Haley sat up, her heart racing. "Really? You want that?" Chris nodded, his eyes shining with love and certainty. "More than anything, I want to build a life with you, Haley. If you want that too, of course." Tears spilled down Haley's cheeks as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want that so much." As they sealed the decision with a kiss, Haley marveled at how far she'd come. From feeling trapped and disconnected in her own body to finding love and acceptance as her true self. It hadn't been an easy journey, but every step had led her here, to this moment of pure happiness. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. There would be challenges, of course. The world wasn't always kind to people like Haley, but she knew that with Chris by her side, and with the strength she'd found in being true to herself, she could face anything. As they began to plan their future together, Haley felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be. This was who she was meant to be. And for the first time in her life, she was truly, completely happy. The day they moved in together was a whirlwind of boxes, furniture arrangements, and laughter. Friends from the bar came to help, filling their new apartment with warmth and cheer. As the last box was unpacked and the helpers said their goodbyes, Haley and Chris stood in the middle of their living room, taking it all in. "Welcome home," Chris said softly, pulling Haley close. Haley leaned into his embrace, her heart full to bursting. "Home," she repeated, savoring the word. For so long, she'd felt adrift, never quite belonging anywhere. But now, in this space they'd created together, she finally felt anchored. That night, as they lay in bed, Haley found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The fear and confusion of her early years, the pain of living as someone she wasn't, the terrifying leap of faith in transitioning. And now, this, a life filled with love, acceptance, and the freedom to be herself. "What are you thinking about?" Chris asked, his voice soft in the darkness. Haley turned to face him, tracing the outline of his face with gentle fingers. "Just how lucky I am. How grateful I am for this life we're building." Chris caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'm the lucky one," he murmured. "You're the bravest, most beautiful person I've ever known, Haley." Inside and out, tears pricked at Haley's eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of Chris's love and acceptance. As she drifted off to sleep in his arms, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges the future might hold, she knew she had the strength to face them, and with Chris by her side, she felt invincible. The months flew by, each day bringing new joys and small victories. Haley continued to thrive at the bar, her natural charm and skill earning her a promotion to head bartender. Chris's software company took off, allowing them to travel and experience new adventures together. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments of pain and struggle. The first time someone deliberately misgendered Haley in public, it felt like a punch to the gut. Chris had been furious, ready to confront the person, but Haley had simply squared her shoulders and walked away. "It's not worth it," she had said later, as they sat on a park bench processing the incident. "Their ignorance doesn't define me. I know who I am." Chris had marveled at her strength, pulling her close and whispering words of love and admiration, and Haley had realized that she meant what she'd said. The opinion of a stranger couldn't shake the certainty she felt in herself, the comfort she'd found in her own skin. As their first anniversary approached, Haley found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed in just a year. From the terrifying leap of faith in transitioning to finding love and building a life with Chris, it felt like a dream come true. The night of their anniversary, Chris surprised her with a romantic dinner at home. He'd gone all out, decorating their apartment with fairy lights and preparing all of Haley's favorite dishes. As they finished dessert, Chris reached across the table to take Haley's hand. "I have something for you," he said, his voice trembling slightly with nerves. Haley watched, her heart racing, as Chris pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He moved to kneel beside her chair, looking up at her with eyes full of love and certainty. "Haley," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "this past year with you has been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what it means to be brave, to be true to yourself no matter what. Your strength, your kindness, your beautiful spirit. I fall more in love with you every day." Tears spilled down Haley's cheeks as Chris opened the box, revealing a delicate diamond ring. "I want to spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, and building a future together," Chris continued. "Haley, will you marry me?" For a moment, Haley couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the depth of her emotions. Then, through her tears, she nodded emphatically. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes!" As Chris slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss, Haley felt a sense of completeness she'd never known before. This was what it meant to be truly wholly herself, to be loved and accepted for exactly who she was. The road ahead might not always be easy. There would still be challenges to face, prejudices to overcome. But Haley knew she had the strength to face whatever came her way, and with Chris by her side, she felt ready for anything. As they celebrated their engagement, dancing slowly in their fairy-lit living room, Haley marveled at how far she'd come, from the confusion and pain of her early years to this moment of pure joy and love. It hadn't been an easy journey, but every step had led her here, to this life she'd always dreamed of but never quite believed she could have. "I love you," she whispered against Chris's chest, her heart full to bursting. Chris's arms tightened around her, his voice soft and sure as he replied, "I love you too, Haley, always and forever." Haley and Chris's wedding had been a beautiful affair, a celebration of love, resilience, and the life they'd built together. Friends and family had gathered under a canopy of twinkling lights, their vows echoing with promises of forever. Now, as the plane touched down on the sun-drenched tarmac of their honeymoon destination, a secluded beach resort nestled along a turquoise coastline, Haley felt a thrill ripple through her. This was their first adventure as a married couple, a chance to revel in each other without the world's noise pressing in. The resort was paradise incarnate. Palm trees swayed lazily in the warm breeze, their fronds casting dappled shadows over pristine white sand. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, its waves whispering secrets as they lapped at the shore. Their private bungalow perched just steps from the water, its open design blending seamlessly with the tropical surroundings. A wide porch spilled onto the beach, complete with a hammock swaying gently between two wooden posts and a plunge pool shimmering under the sun. From the moment they arrived, Haley felt a lightness she couldn't quite name. She wore a flowing sundress, the soft fabric skimming her skin in a way that still made her marvel at her own body. Her transition had been a journey of courage and discovery. And now, standing here as Chris's wife, she felt whole in a way she'd once only dreamed of. Chris, ever her rock, looked at her with that quiet adoration that never failed to make her heart skip. Dressed in a loose linen shirt and shorts, his dark hair tousled by the sea breeze, he was effortlessly handsome, and hers. The first few days were a blur of bliss. They spent their mornings lounging on the beach, toes buried in the warm sand as they sipped cocktails from coconut shells. Haley loved the way the sun kissed her skin, turning it a soft golden hue she'd never dared imagine in her past life. Chris couldn't keep his hands off her, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm or brushing against her waist as they lay side by side on a blanket. They laughed over silly things. Chris's attempt to skim stones across the waves, Haley's insistence that she could outswim him to the buoy, she couldn't, and stole kisses whenever the mood struck. Afternoons were for exploring. They rented a kayak and paddled out into the lagoon, marveling at the schools of brightly colored fish darting beneath the surface. Another day, they hiked through a nearby jungle trail, the air thick with the scent of blooming orchids and the distant calls of tropical birds. Chris teased Haley about her newfound love for adventure, but she could see the pride in his eyes as she embraced every moment with fearless joy. Evenings brought romance. They dined at the resort's open-air restaurant, the candlelight flickering against their faces as they shared plates of fresh seafood and sipped chilled wine. Haley felt a rush every time Chris called her Mrs. Thompson, the title still new and thrilling on his lips. After dinner, they'd stroll back to their bungalow hand in hand, the moon casting silver streaks across the water. Sometimes they'd sit on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, their voices mingling with the soft crash of the waves. Other times they'd tumble into bed, a tangle of limbs and whispered promises, savoring the intimacy of being utterly alone together. By the 5th day, the rhythm of their honeymoon had settled into something perfect. Lazy, indulgent, and deeply connected. That morning, they decided to stay in, skipping the planned snorkeling trip in favor of a day by their private pool. Haley lounged on a cushioned chair in a teal bikini, the fabric hugging her curves in a way that made her feel powerful and feminine. Chris emerged from the bungalow with 2 glasses of pineapple-infused rum, his swim trunks riding low on his hips. He handed her a drink and settled beside Haisa, his gaze lingering on her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine, despite the warmth of the day. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more. I hope you have a wonderful day, my cutie.